edition over here. We are going to speak. It's going to mark the Hilula here. We are in the heart of the month of Cheshvan, of a famous chief rabbi. He was of the Ottoman Empire and also of Egypt at one stage in time. Rabbi Chaim Nahum Effendi, very, very famous rabbi of his time. So we did actually record a video, I think, previously. I think it was about 2 years ago, albeit it was a briefish video we did. But I thought let's speak much more in depth because he was rabbi very much at a big, various different junction time periods all throughout, let's just say, so much happened in the Jewish world during that specific window of time. So much can be said within regards to him. I believe he passed away in the year 1960. It happened to have been. Chaim Nahum Effendi, I think he lived between 1873 to 1960. He was about 88 years of age at the time passed away. To be precise, it was the 13th of November in 1960 that he passed away. So his English passing, let's say, would be marked, I think, in a couple of days' time if we want to look at the English calendar in of itself. But he was a very famous rabbi, and to be a chief rabbi of various countries, obviously, was just a feat in of its own. I think 23rd of Cheshvan will mark his Hilula. So from the time of recording, we're talking about it's quite a few days away. But still, nevertheless, he was a famous rabbi, Hacham Bashi, as they say also. And he was also a linguist. He was a jurist. He was a scholar. And especially during the early part of the 20th century. So I think we're going to explore much within regards to him. So he was born, I think, in Turkey in the year 1872, I think this in the area of Manisa, which let's just say is Manisa itself is a city in the Turkey Aegean region, I think, near Manisa province, respectively. I think quite near Izmir, if I'm not mistaken. And he was sent by his parents to learn at yeshiva in Tiberias, after which he studied. I think he would study secondary education and obtain a degree in Islamic law. Very interesting enough. So that was very interesting enough. So it's actually just to say a few more things within regards to him. L'bocho Yosef נחום ולקטן גר אסיה לבית פרנקו. משפחת מצאצאי מגורשי ספרד. So just to add on another point, their family itself came from the Spanish Inquisition many years before. It was actually in the year 1881. He was 8 years of age when he went to Tiberias to Israel. So that's already a big move. In 1886, when he was 13 years of age, לאחר השלמת לימודו בישיבה, חזר לאיזמיר ולמד בית ספר תיקון צרפתי בעיר. So I think when he was 13 years of age, after spending 5 years in Tiberias, he would go on to learn, I think in a school system in France at that stage in time. הוא המשיך את לימודו באיסטנבול. He would go on to progress his learning in Istanbul. שם השלים תואר בלימודים אסלאמיים. I think v'diplomati, it's a beit sefer hagboa mishpatim. So he would go to a school education system over there and would, I think, receive some sort of diplomatic position or degree in itself. Come 1893, Zachat Magla Mata'am Kol Israel Chaverim. So he would actually, I think he would receive some sort of a stipend within regards to Alliance systems to learn in Paris at that point in time. So maybe some sort of association or recommendation it was. And there was a seminar, a rabbinic seminary over there. And he would receive a rabbinic ordination, I think, come up the year 1897. That stage in time, he was about 24 years of age. So he was in Paris over there. Maybe we'll speak about this Paris rabbinic seminary at a later time. I think we've spoken about various rabbis that would actually be ordained over there. And במהלך שהותו בפריז השלים גם תואר בלימוד דת מהמכון היישומי ללימודים גבוהים ותואר נוסף במזרחונות מבית ספר לשפות האוריינות של University Sorbonne. So he'd actually get, I think, qualifications from various university, if I'm not mistaken. So he would study, I think, inside it was a Sorbonne School of Oriental Languages where he studied. He studied philosophy, history, linguists over there, while at the same time, that sphere of time, he would actually receive his rabbinic ordination also. Then eventually he would return to Constantinople and he would occupy various different teaching positions at that point in time. Apparently, it would include even in the Turkish military academy. While over there, I think he would actually receive further positions. Let's just say he became acquainted with many famous leaders of young Turk movement who would, let's say, gain power in 1908, respectively. So he was getting very, very well, let's say, associated at that window of time and was getting very well connected also with. Remember, Turkey was a main area at that stage in time for Turling. 1909 would actually see him succeed Rabbi Moses Levi as the chief rabbi of the Ottoman Empire. Now, it's actually interesting just to backtrack just a little bit. I think it was in 1899. It was at that stage in time, we're talking about 10 years prior. This was, so it was in 1899. Remember, he was born in the 1872. So at that stage, he was 27 years of age. He'd get married to Rabbanit Sultana. I think that was a daughter of Rabbi Abraham Danon. Now, Rabbi Abraham Danon was another famous rabbi, a poet. He was a translator. He was a journalist. He was a historian. He was an educator. And someone we've spoken about on various occasions on his series. So he would have been the father-in-law of Rabbi Chaim Nahum Effendi. Rabbi Abraham Danon was, I think at one stage, he would actually be heading the Turkish Rabbinic Seminary at one stage in time, somewhere that we spoke about, I think, in a previous video. And he would actually, as we said before, afterwards, as he got married, he returned to Istanbul and would take on various different positions, I think in the Kol Yisrael Chaverim, the Alliance, and he was appointed a deputy of Rabbi Abraham Danon, I think the Beit Midrash Rabbanim of Istanbul, respectively, at that stage in time. And so I think they started it out. I think it was connected to Alliance, this rabbinical seminary. I think they branched off at a later stage in time, but we did record a video about it and touch upon it at a previous stage. At Sabait Ottoman Istanbul, we talked about how he was connected to the military and education there. Sham Zacha Lakir Kama Mavleitan Ot HaTurkim HaTzirim. As we mentioned before, he would become acquainted with various different Turkish important people over there. 1909. That was at the point, as we mentioned before, Moshe Levi, Rabbi Moshe Levi Effendi. He would actually finish his position at that stage in time as the chief rabbi. I think he lived between 1827 to 1910. So he would take on that position after him. Remember, he also got the title Effendi. Let's just say something about Rabbi Moshe Levi Effendi. He was also another very famous rabbi. Some rabbi we recorded a video about. He was obviously the chief rabbi of the Ottoman Empire in his day, and I think he would actually, he was appointed to the position of chief rabbi following the emigration of Rabbi Yakir Giron, if I'm not mistaken, and was appointed also to rabbinical court. I think he was connected very much to his father also. So that's something that we have to point out, but a very great rabbi that we did mention about on various occasions before in this series, which I very much recommend everyone to look over. He was, I think many people would actually speak about him, if I'm not mistaken. He had connections to Rabbi Yaakov Shaul Elisha, Rabbi Yaakov Meir, Rabbi Elio Moshe Paniziel, Rabbi Raphael Moshe Paniziel at that stage in time. That was the kind of caliber of Rabbanim there was, and that's something very, very interesting. Okay, so Rabbi Chaim Nahum Effendi will take over that position as the chief rabbi of the Ottoman Empire at that point. So it was a major, major position. We've got to remember that was. And he would take much effort, let's just say, with regards to restoration of communal institutions. He found that I think he was closely connected, or he was acquainted with David Fresco, who was editor of the El Tempo, a Ladino newspaper, who supported positions of Turkish reformers, let's just say. I think during the First World War, he strove to be appointed as ambassador of the Ottoman Empire to the United States, but I'm not sure if he actually received that position or not. It was very well documented, I think, according to those things, but nevertheless, he was a chief rabbi of the Ottoman Empire. I think there was negotiations at that point in time. It was a Turkish War of Independence, which would follow the First World War. So Rabbi נחום was, I think, a representative of the Ottoman Jews and was a member of the Turkish delegation that signed the Lausanne Treaty for his services to the Turkish government. And then at that stage in time, he was given that specific title of Effendi over here. Remember, just like Rabbi Moses Levi, his predecessor, was also titled Effendi, he would also receive that at that stage in time. So much more would get progress within regards to that. So that's much we have to point out. Remember, it was a turbulent time period all over the world, and especially in the Ottoman Empire, and with all these wars that was going on in the First World War, respectively, there was much change in the world. That's something that we have to stress out. Okay, so let's continue. I think it was in 1923, I believe, he would receive an invitation from Moïse Katel of Pasha, he was the head of the Jewish community of Cairo. He was, I think we mentioned him also on a previous occasion before. That's what we have to point out. And this important meeting, I think this was to tempt him to become the chief rabbi of Egypt. He was actually appointed a senator of Egypt's legislative assembly and was founding member of the Royal Academy of the Arabic language. Among his many scholarly works was a translation into French of Ottoman firmans, or edicts, that was, I believe, sent, if I'm not mistaken, to the governors and the rulers of Egypt by the Sublime Porte from the Turkish conquest of Egypt, I think in 1517, until the late 19th century, respectively. Now, we're going to explore about his works in due course, but so that was a big position. So, more going there. I think it was in 1921. Huzman al-Yedei Kilat Yudei Mitzrayim Shemesh Krava Rashi Shel Kila. So I'm not too sure if it was in 1922 or 1925, but he was invited there. בהמשך הוא מונה לחבר מועצות המחוקקים המצריים, as I mentioned before, ונמנה עם המייסדים של האקדמיה ללשון העברית בקהיר. So he part of a language institution. He was actually appointed. הרב נחום אפנדי היה חוקר פורה. ובין מבעליו גדולים ניתן למנות את תרגום לצרפתית של כל הפרמנים העות'מאניים שנשלו למצרים. Yes, as we mentioned before, between 1517 to the late 19th century. So it was a translator also. ספר אחר שלו, שאותו הוא פרסם בשנת 1909. I think his book was publicized, עוסק ביהודית בבל, and he was like exploring the history within regards to the Jewish community of Bavel, of Egypt, of Iraq, respectively, over there. And much more can be said within regards to that. So, הרב נחום אפנדי היה פעיל גם בנושאים בינלאומיים וסייע ביצירת קשרים בין קהילות יהודית שונות מרחבי העולם. He was in connections with many different Jewish communities and people from all over the world. הוא ביקר Ethiopia, if I'm not mistaken, he would be connected even to Ethiopia. He would actually send people from Ethiopia directly to actually learn in Egypt at that point in time. And בשנת 1909 הוא פרסם מחקה על יהודית Ethiopia. I think he researched on them. כמו כן, עד כיבוש רודוס על ידי גרמניה הנאצית, הוא היה תומך גדול של ישיבה ספרדית באי. So I think in the island over there, he was very much of the yeshiva, Spanish yeshiva he would be. ושלח תלמידים רבים ללמוד בו. Now, it's actually interesting. לאחר מלחמת העצמאות של ישראל, I think after the 1948 War of Independence, רשויות מצרים הרבו לרדוף את יהודים מצרים, להקשות של חייהם, מאות יהודים נעצרו ונחקקו על פעילות ציונית, עסקים יהודים הופקעו. חשבונות בנק יהודיים הופקעו, וויזות ליציאת מהמדינה אושרו רק על ידי רשות ממשלתית לעניינים יהודיים. So I think there was a point in time after the 1948 World War, there was a lot of 1948 Independence War. It was a fear for life at that stage in time to stay inside Egypt. So many, let's just say, he would actually help the people move from there to Eretz Israel. It's actually interesting. He actually did immense work with regards to the history of Egyptian community also. And those writings he did were very, very significant and important. I think it was in 1944, he would help to reconstitute the Société d'études historiques Juifs d'Egypte, the Society of the Historical Society of the Jews of Egypt, and served as its honorary head, if I'm not mistaken. Rabbi נחum was also active in international affairs. We mentioned before he visited Ethiopia, arranged for Ethiopian Jews to study there. Until German occupation of Rhodes, he was a great supporter of the Sephardic yeshiva of the island, and many of his Talmidim he would send there. And remember, we recorded a video on the famous Rhodes rabbinical seminary of previous years also. Now, as I mentioned before, the creation of the State of Israel in the late 1940s led to increased economic and political hardship, obviously, for Egypt's Jewish community. Hundreds were arrested and interned, let's just say, for Zionistic activity. Jewish businesses were confiscated, Jewish bank accounts frozen, and exit visas could be approved only by a special government agency for Jewish affairs. Rabbi נחum attempted to ameliorate the effect of these developments for his community with mixed success. He was a supporter, let's just say, of the Ottomanization and thus maybe it might have even opposed Zionism, though he was willing to assist some of their goals. So he was cooperating, let's say, allowing Jewish immigration to and settlement in Palestine and purchase by land their non-citizens. I think come what 1950, he was about 78 years of age. I think he lost his eyesight, but would continue his duties as well as he could, if I'm not mistaken. He would officiate at the Shar HaShamayim synagogue and would give over various different sermons, let's just say, in of itself. So Shar HaShamayim synagogue, I think, is also known as a Temple Ismailia and the Adli Street synagogue, located in Cairo in Egypt. I think we actually spoke about it. If I'm not mistaken, one of the famous synagogues in Egypt that happens to be. I think it was actually inaugurated back in the year 1908, and it commenced as a synagogue in 1899, respectively. And I think the synagogue is still upkeep. I'm not sure if it's a museum or if it's still running in of itself. I think it was a Sephardi synagogue, but many Ashkenazi Jews would also go and attend that specific synagogue in of itself. That's what we have to point out. So I think he, before he passed away, he suffered from various medical problems, and I think, so he passed away in 1960, as so before. I think the 23rd of Cheshvan marks his Hilula. So that's very interesting. So he was a famous rabbi of his time. We'll say a few more importances within regards to him, and he was connected with many of the famous rabbis that I've spoken about on various occasions before. And I think at one stage in time, Rabbi Ovadia Yosef will be working in Egypt, and Rabbi Ovadia Yosef will be there also inside that specific vicinity. If I'm not mistaken, it was Rabbi Ben Zion Meir Chai Uziel that maybe helped Rabbi Ovadia Yosef, let's say, move to Egypt at that stage in time. And I think he spent a window of time there, if I'm not mistaken. So he received various decorations, Rabbi Chaim Nahum Effendi, from various different countries. I think from the Ottoman, the Order of the Ottomans, the Order of the Majid, and the France Legion of Honor, if I'm not mistaken, and the Order of France Joseph, also respectively. So he would receive various different titles also, which is important to point out. We're going to speak about the history of the chief rabbinate also of the Ottoman Empire in the coming minutes. I think it's very important to speak about it. He was a chief rabbi of Egypt for 35 years, remember, which is a staggering amount of time. One of the longest serving chief rabbis, you could say, in history. This is 35 years. We've seen rabbis that were even 50, 40 years. I think there was one rabbi we spoke about inside the series that was even as many as 60 years, if I'm not mistaken. But his time period itself was a huge amount of time. So he was about 88 years of age at the time he passed away. That's something to point out, and was arguably, you could say, one of the famous rabbis of the Ottoman Empire and of Egypt also, respectively. Much is actually chronicled over in various different places. Especially, he was very famous among the non-Jewish community also, not just among the Jewish community. And many, I think, the participation in the funeral, the people, many thousands of people came, not just Jewish, I think Muslims and Christians also, if I'm not mistaken, and various important people, dignitaries, would have actually come at that stage in time. And let's just say he gained a lot of trust from various different heads of states and ministers, both especially in Turkey and in Egypt, and kept going even despite, let's say, the eyesight problems towards the end of life. He was really on the sphere. He was able to speak, communicate pretty much with everybody, and took these all these different positions in of itself. So that's important matters. Let's just speak about it. Anyone, friends, if you're tuning in at the moment, we're exploring a few of the highlights of Rabbi Chaim Nahum Effendi's life over here. Marks his Hilula, date of his passing on the 23rd of Cheshvan, towards the end of the week. So we are speaking about him, and I think it's a very important topic. We've spoken about various occasions before, some of the famous rabbis. Now, I think he passed away in Cairo, to point out. His father was someone named Joseph Bechor נחום, and his mother was Kaden נחום, if I'm not mistaken. So as we mentioned before, Sultana was his wife's name, and he would have two children, including Marcel Gerson Morax and Joseph נחום also, which is very interesting to point out. I think he had many brothers and sisters, including Rachel Levi, Benjamin נחום, Esther Hassan, or you can pronounce it different ways. in of itself. But Joseph נחום, I think his son, had actually passed away, if I'm not mistaken, in Paris in 1994. So Rabbi Chaim Nahum Effendi, he was a famous rabbi of his time. And I think the famous historian Moshe David Gaon, who we've spoken about also various occasions before, would actually chronicle much within regards to his life. He was the author of the Rechsel des Firmans in Preax, I think in the year 1934, if I'm not mistaken. So he had much. It was in 1905 when his son Joseph was born, and Marcel Gerson was born, I think, in the year 1908, if I'm not mistaken. So that's another interesting tidbit within regards to the famous rabbi that we should very much point out. Within regards to, he will be succeeded, if I'm not mistaken, by Rabbi Shabtai Levi as the chief rabbi of the Ottoman Empire. Remember, he was 11 years there. And then the rabbi after, so he would actually follow the previous rabbi as a chief rabbi of Egypt, was Rabbi Masud Chaim ben Shimon. He was the previous rabbi. And he was succeeded then by Rabbi Chaim Musa Dweck. He was another great rabbi. He was the last chief rabbi of Egypt. I think he passed away in 1974. And he was actually from Antep in Turkey. Rabbi Musa was, and he also attended Alliance school system and received rabbinical degree. He was part of, I believe, the Keter Torah Yeshiva in Cairo. So he actually was the Talmid of Rav Yosef Pinto, and he was a Talmid of Rabbi Chaim Nahum. Also, Rabbi Chaim Musa Dweck was, and very much can be said within regards to him also respectively. So Rabbi Chaim Nahum Effendi was a famous rabbi of his time. Friends, if you're tuning in, please subscribe to the channel at the moment. We've got fantastic content over here on this channel, so please welcome everyone, and please share these videos, and please subscribe also. That's something. So I think there were several books. The La Vie Juven Babylonia, I think that was in 1900. Sep Mois en Abyssian, I think 1909. La Literature Karaite in Turkey, 1912. And there was a book also, I think, printed in the year 1932. He would actually print. So you can see he was very, very well decorated and very, very well knowledge, let's just say, in of itself. So he did a lot of importances and really made his imprint. I think a lot of his writings is actually found in the National Library of Israel on the website, which I very much recommend people to look at. And there's many, many articles within regards to him you can find actually that is chronicled over. That's something that we definitely have to point out also. So that's very interesting. I think these articles actually feature the various manuscripts of his workings. That's something that we definitely very much have to point out also. So let's talk about it. Chacham Bashi was a position in Turkey that many great rabbis, prestigious rabbis, would actually have a position. I think after him was Rabbi Shabtai Levi for 2 years, and then Rabbi Ishak Ariel. I'm not sure if it was an official position or not. So Rabbi Chaim Nahum was about 12 years, if I'm not mistaken. He actually, the rabbi, as we mentioned before, was Rabbi Moses Levi Effendi, who was a staggering also 36 years, the chief rabbi. That was followed beforehand by Rabbi Yakir Geron, who was another famous rabbi, Turkish rabbi. I think he was the 6th rabbi of the Adrian Paul descended from the Geron family, and obviously would become a chief rabbi, I think, in 1863 to 1872. And I think he became a rabbi himself in the year 1835. Before that was Rabbi Jacob Avigdor, Rabbi Chaim HaKohen, Rabbi Jacob Bahar David, Rabbi Moses Fresco. These were key positions, remember, to be the Chacham Bashi over there. It was established, I think, all the way back to Ottoman Sultan Mehmed II, if I'm not mistaken, many, many years before. So the chief rabbi role was more modern role. They were looking obviously for the more modern type of rabbi, more educated, you could say, worldly educated. That's something that we have to point out within regards to the chief rabbi. They had many, many rabbis over the years that would be, let's say, be the chief rabbi of the Ottoman Empire. I think also before Rabbi Chaim HaKohen, it was Rabbi Jacob Bahar David, who was before that Rabbi Moses Fresco, Rabbi Samuel ben Moshe Chaim, Rabbi Avram Halevi was before, Rabbi Chaim Yaakov ben Yakar, and Rabbi Eliezer Palombo, if I'm not mistaken. Rabbi Solomon Haim al-Fandari was for 17 years also. Rabbi Meir Ishaki between 1766 1780, and the list goes on all the way. The first couple of rabbis, I think the first rabbi was all the way back till the year 1454 to 1495, Rabbi Moses Kapsali, And then he was followed by Rabbi Elijah Mizrahi between 1497 to 1526. And then the position kept going on and on. So let's just say in of itself, so that was very, very prestigious. But he himself was obviously a very famous, well-decorated rabbi, Rabbi Chaim Nahum Effendi. I recommend everyone to learn more within regards to him. He was followed by Rabbi Musa Dweck, respectively, and great positions in of itself. So I recommend everyone also to watch that video that we recorded a while back. We recorded, I think it was 2 years ago, Rabbi Chaim Nahum Effendi, and it was a very brief video, but you can see he was very, very well decorated in his time within regards to various different jobs he had all throughout. Many of the encyclopedias will actually feature his teachings, and also was just reading Wikipedia as source. He was actually he was buried actually in Egypt. I think his grandfather from his father's side was Rabbi Yitzchak נחום, if I'm not mistaken. His his grandmother was Bechora Esther, if I'm not mistaken, from his father's side. And another rabbi of his, so Rabbi Avram Danon, who I mentioned before, was his rabbi. Also, Rabbi David Abu was also, so it's very, very interesting. He was actually born quite close to Hanukkah, I think 10 days before Hanukkah, if we go back to it. And I think it was on Tet Vav, if I'm not mistaken. And he knew many languages, hence he was a linguist at that stage in time. That's how he was really able to progress at that stage in time and really, really concentrate and become very, very important, let's just say, and very sought after within regards to various different important rabbinical positions. And I think he also was very, very visiting many places. He would visit Edirne, Izmir in Turkey, Saloniki in Greece. I think he'd visit Beirut and Alexandria and Cairo in Egypt and Damascus in Syria. So you can see he was very, very well traveled. And so he would be a chief rabbi, I think, in total for, I think, more than 40 years if you combine the two countries together. So he would actually receive an honorary citizenship also in Egypt, we have to point out, back at one stage in time, and was very, very well active within regards to the famous yeshiva in Rhodes. That's something very important to see. So, friends, over here, I hope this was informative. Rabbi Chaim Nahum Effendi, the chief rabbi of the Ottoman Empire and also of Egypt. So let's speak a bit about Egypt now for a minute, because that's also a key position, and he had it for many, many years, I think, in that specific history in of itself. So, as we mentioned before, Rabbi Chaim Musa Dweck was chief rabbi before. I think there were other famous chief rabbis of Egypt, including someone named Rabbi Jacob de Castro, who was way, way before, between 1525 to 1610. He was also a great rabbinic scholar. He was an exponent of Jewish law in Cairo, and a descendant of Jews that actually fled Portugal, if I'm not mistaken. Now, another chief rabbi of Egypt was Rabbi Masliach ben Solomon HaKohen, also known as Matzliach. He was a genius also, and the leader of the Palestine Gaonate in Fushtat, the principal Talmudic academy and central legalistic body in the Jewish community of Palestine. Also, if I'm not mistaken, another one of the chief rabbis there was Rabbi David ben Solomon ibn Zimra, who was way, way before. And Sar Shalom ben Moshe. He was also called Zuta, if I'm not mistaken. He was the last of the Egyptian Gaonim, and held office in the Fustat as a Nagid of the Egyptian community from 1170 to 1171, and again, I think from 1173 to 1196, if I'm not mistaken. So that is very, very interesting. So he was also a great rabbi of that point in time. Hopefully we'll be able to speak about him. But 23rd of Cheshvan marks the Hilula of Rabbi Chaim Nahum Effendi, a famous rabbi. Now, friends, over here, we are a community. Please, if you feel anyone is interested in watching any of these videos, please share these videos to other people. We are nearing a staggering 8,000 subscribers. So, friends, please subscribe to our channel and join our community now. We will really, really appreciate it. Great content we've got. We also do tours all over the country, which is very important, I think, for everyone to be aware of, because everyone wants to, especially not just people in Israel, but people outside of Israel, would love to hear more information within regards to the famous rabbi. So that is also very famous and very positive. I will also record a burst of inspiration from a Jewish personality here in modern day on this channel over here. So we're doing like a lot of great things. We try and get about in places, and we try and explore the history within regards to famous Sephardic rabbis. We happen to speak about Rabbi Chaim Nahum Effendi today, one of the great rabbis of Egypt and Turkey of his time, and something very important. So you can check out his information in the National Library of Israel also, which is something that we can definitely stress over, and much of his writings I would very much recommend everyone to actually look into it, friends, over here. So I think on that note, I'm going to wish you all a good night, friends, and it was thought provocative and it was good. I'm wishing you all well. Thank you for watching and have a great night.